So I had a fun little experience the other day when I was going through my online library of ebooks, and I discovered that I happen to have a copy of Shane Dawson's I Hate Myselfie. What? You mean you didn't know that infamous YouTuber Shane Dawson, who was publicly booted off the platform in 2020, had a novel? Surely you heard about his memoir that was published back in 2015, including 20 original essays written by him that were described as, quote, uncensored and yet surprisingly sweet? You mean you never heard of this book? Well, maybe that's because it was a flop. Not only does this book give YouTuber memoirs a bad name, but it's also a written document of every horrible thing that Shane Dawson was canceled on the internet for. And guess what? We have it! Yeah, so recently I decided I needed a laugh and read through I Hate Myselfie for the first time. Because to my great shame, I did used to be a Shane Dawson fan. Insert photos of me with his merch. I know it was not a good point in time for me, but I'm 23 years old now and I know better. And after reading this book, I can't believe I bought it. But you know what? Shout out to past me for planning the content of the future. So if you don't know, which I don't know how you don't, but Shane Dawson was a very famous YouTuber back in the day. He started his career back in 2008, starting with comedy skits and eventually growing his platform. Then there was a glorious point in time where he wasn't getting as high as view counts and he really should have fallen off the platform. But like the cockroach of the internet that he is, he revamped his image and came back with docuseries and more high quality content, quote unquote. He also found a lot of success with his conspiracy theory videos and eventually shot to fame, hitting over 20 million subscribers. But it all came crashing down in 2019, shortly after the release of his conspiracy theory palettes. At the same time, in 2019, Tati Westbrook released her infamous Bye Sister video. Everyone knows the Bye Sister video, in which she lodged some hefty accusations against fellow makeup artist James Charles, claiming that he had very inappropriate relations and interactions with minors. After that whole scandal, following up in 2020, she released a second video. This one was titled Breaking My Silence, where she retracted a lot of her statements and specifically lodged another set of accusations against Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson, saying that they had essentially pushed her to make this video to throw James under the bus so that they could profit off of his downfall. There were tweets, a very famous live from Shane Dawson that followed.
You're fake crying. You are fake crying. You are fake crying. That is not real. Oh my God.
And as Shane Dawson was getting dragged by the makeup community, people decided to bring up his not so glorious past, sharing clips from his podcast, old YouTube videos where he was being any ism or ist that you can think of. That's what he was doing on the internet, including portraying a caricature of a black woman named Shanae, of which he was still selling merch as late as 2020, and even making inappropriate jokes about an underage Willow Smith. Following this mass backlash, Shane Dawson made his video called Taking Accountability, where he did everything but. You can watch the video, it's still up, but in short, it's essentially, I don't know who that person was, I would never make jokes like that, but I did make jokes like that because shock value and I was edgy and in the closet, and being in the closet makes you racist, I don't know. Of course, that video was not received well, and he left the platform before shortly returning in 2021. He tried to fall back to his normal docuseries content, but he had lost a great percentage of his viewership by that point. He switched over to his second channel, Shane 2, where he does post with more regularity. He also started a podcast with his husband Ryan, his brother Jared, and a few people that I don't really care enough about to research, so there's that. That channel has a little over 2 million subscribers, and even with all these new business ventures, he is still struggling to scrape 1 million views. Which I already know, people are gonna be in my comments saying, okay, but where are your 1 million views at, blah, 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 blah. You can never reach his notoriety. Sure, but you know, in comparison, I am not insecure about my view counts, but I take great pleasure in knowing that he is. Can you imagine going from racking up 45 million views on a single video to barely scraping 800,000? I know that those numbers keep him up at night, and knowing that, brings me great pleasure, especially because he was racking up more views back when he had the yellow thumbnails and he was making cakes out of fast food. It's really cathartic to think about, honestly. And given the climate now, I need that. So, as I mentioned, I did used to be a fan, and the only reason that I was really drawn to him as a creator was because I felt identified with him, specifically because he also talked about his struggles with his self-image, his weight, he had depression, his parents were divorced, and a lot of the things that he went through I was also going through in my adolescence. And I just felt like really aligned with him when he was talking about like those struggles and how it impacted his life. But you know, even with that, even with all of his trauma and his struggles, he still turned out to be a horrible person, which eventually the moral of the story, what I learned is that you can't put these people on a pedestal just because they go through quote unquote similar issues, because at the end of the day, Shane Dawson was living in a mansion and I was working as a cashier at a grocery store. We were not the same. So back when I was making $10 an hour, I decided to use my very small paycheck to buy his book. Why? I have no idea, because I didn't even read it back then. And you might be asking yourself, Kristen, it's been almost 10 years since that book was published. Why are you reviewing it now? And to answer that question of why I'm reviewing it is because, well, I can and I want to. You know, I've learned a lot from my idol, Rosanna Pansino. She's taught me that I will never ever get my foot off of someone's neck. I'm a hater through and through to the day that I die. Rosanna has Mr. Beast locked and loaded. She's got him locked down. She can handle, she's on the front lines over there. So I will take up arms and be on the front lines against Shane Dawson. The day that man gets off the internet is the day that we win. Plus, in the introduction of this book, he says, what I'm saying is that I embrace the fact that I have a punchable face, and that if I could punch myself without feeling it, I would. Feel free to laugh at my misfortune and get that feeling of, wow, my life is so much better than that guy's. So I'm just taking his advice at the end of the day. Of course, because this is a Shane Dawson memoir from the good golden age of 2015, there's going to be a lot of triggering things and offensive things in this book. So if you are sensitive to any of those things, please just don't watch the video, especially if you blissfully forgot all of the awful things that Shane Dawson did in his career. We're going to cover all of that again today. Let's go through Shane Dawson's highlight reel of how he ended his own career. I had the glorious opportunity of also listening to the audiobook for I Hate Myselfie, which he narrated himself, which, you know, if you forgot what a good old-fashioned Shane Dawson black scent sounds like, feel free to pick up the audiobook because it's there. So now I will be going through each and every short essay in this book, starting with My Destiny. So this is the story of how Shane Dawson got a botched haircut that eventually led to his iconic emo straightened hair look. So within the first paragraph, right, like when you're getting into this memoir about his life, we get this banger where he fat shames Kelly Clarkson. I'm gonna have to censor myself, but he also simultaneously makes an sexual innuendo about her sitting on his face. He says, quote, having a stranger touch my head while asking me personal questions about my life makes my nerves shoot through the roof. It's the same feeling a wicker chair gets when a circa 2006 Kelly Clarkson takes a seat. Tense, all caps. But sometimes you have to bite the bullet and let Kelly Clarkson sit on your face. I know he was definitely just jealous that she had, God forbid, an actual singing career and he didn't. I don't know. He then goes into his tried and true content, introducing a caricature of a black woman as his hairstylist, with the standard assumption that she is fat, uneducated, and has issues with her baby daddy. And if you pick up the audiobook and listen to this essay, Shane Dawson delivers her dialogue in the heaviest black scent imaginable, just in case you as the reader were confusing her for an actual human being with emotions and, I don't know, a personality. Anyway, in this story, she accidentally cuts off too much of his hair and has to restyle it for him, eventually introducing him to the straightener. He ends up with a look that he's actually okay with and expresses his excitement about looking good for the first time in his life, that he says, quote, I wasn't the prettiest girl at the prom, but I was definitely good enough to get date. You cannot make this up, I fear. Then we have My High School Musical. This is one of the short stories that he did make into a short film. Essentially, the story is about the time that he tried out for his school's musical, and specifically about the lead in that musical, Patty. He and everyone a part of the musical think that she's perfect, she has this amazing singing voice, and she is the envy of the high school drama club, truly. But eventually he finds out that she's not as perfect as she seems, and she's actually very insecure about her looks. Shane comforts Patty and essentially uses self-deprecating humor to make her feel better about herself, which is obviously not good, but in my own experiences as a fat person, I know that it's pretty common. You know, we all have those friends that are like, oh my God, I'm so fat. And then to make them feel better, you have to say, no, you're not. Because obviously the worst thing that could possibly happen to a person is being fat. There is heavy sarcasm there. There are worse things that could happen to you. Which, you know, this could have led to a greater commentary about how fat people are forced to essentially make jokes out of themselves to make other people feel better. And how that kind of self-deprecating humor can actually have a really bad effect on your self-image and your own mental health. But no, because Shane Dawson doesn't have a serious bone in his body, the story just turns into hee hee haha, I am fat. That is the joke. And he also admitted to some truly heinous shit, saying, I was one of those kids who would do whatever my friends wanted, even if I knew it was wrong. The number of times we went through a Del Taco drive-thru and acted like we had Tourette's syndrome was countless. If this were me, which it would never, ever be me, this is something that you could not get out of me with a pew pew to my head. I can't believe this is only the second one. Anyway, we have two first kisses. This is a story about how Shane had his first kiss on the set of a film with his friend Lisa, which if you don't know, that name should ring some bells. That was the girl he dated before he came out of the closet. Then apparently he also took in a random Canadian girl and had a not relationship, but not situationship with her. But by far my favorite part of this story is the last line where he says, and to this day, we are still kissing each other with the same amount of passion, talking about Lisa, a girl. It's been more than 3 years and I still feel like there's more to unwrap. Every day I get a glimpse of what's inside. I hope it never ends. Oh, sweetie. Oh, you poor closeted man. I'm not in any way making fun of normal closeted people that are just not ready to come out or are trying desperately to assimilate to our heterosexual norms. I am only laughing because this mindset is in every single story without fail. Somehow he always brings up that people think he's gay when they look at him, that he looks like a woman, supposedly, which I don't know what that means to him, and how he's just desperately trying not to look quote unquote gay. You're in for a rude awakening, my friend. You are now married to a man and with child. Congratulations. Just for reference, this book came out in March of 2015, and Shane Dawson officially came out and broke up with his girlfriend Lisa 4 months later. Ugh. Comedic timing at its finest. The next story we have is called The Original Catfish. Now stay with me because Shane Dawson does something really funny here. He tells a story about how he got called fat in school and decided to create a fake profile to catfish this bully and solicit photos of said bully to then distribute around the school and use as blackmail. Now, I don't know the logistics of admitting to a legit crime in a book. Is this reader-writer confidentiality? Can the feds not get you for this? I truly do not know. But anyway, his response is so disproportionate. You would think that those people had been bullying him for years, when in reality, he got put with these boys in a group project. And then when he tried to talk to them, they called him fat, which again is not nice. They were trying to hurt his feelings, obviously. But what a reaction. You know how many steps are involved with creating a fake profile, messaging said person, and soliciting photos of them? There's so many opportunities for you to be like, hey, maybe this is not a good idea. Maybe I'm really, going into criminal territory here. Maybe I should just be the bigger person, seek the high road and whatnot. But no. But anyway, after seeing his bully be completely mortified by the experience and borderline traumatized, he decides that, hey, maybe it's a bad idea to, I don't know, distribute child pornography because someone called you fat once. And the moral of the story is that Shane makes a pact with himself to always be the bigger person and never stoop as low as a bully. And, well, that pact did not turn out very well for him because, well, we all saw the live stream.
Because you message drama channels!
The next story we have is between Hollywood and an abortion clinic. Banger of a title. It's a pretty throwaway story about how he got scammed into an acting school that wasn't actually legit. It made me a little sad because he says that his mom had to max out all their credit cards to pay for the tuition. This story just reflects on what I think the overall purpose of this book is, because the only thread of coherence through a lot of these stories is that Shane is trying to hint that he has an acting career, that he's a film guy. Because I truly believe that the only purpose of this book was to launch his career as an actor. This story is essentially him being like, yeah, I got scammed, but eventually I got a Kids' Choice Award, so joke's on you. Then we have Denny's and death, and this is one of the very, very, very few examples of the kind of story where, you know, morbid and or dark humor can actually work well. Now, I'm not saying his worked well. It's just an example, because juxtaposing something like the death of a family member with something as mundane and comedic as eating at a Denny's, it's a really interesting concept, and I think it speaks to how it feels when you lose a family member and the world like doesn't stop around you. Like, you could be going through the worst grief of your life, and somewhere in the world a Denny's exec is thinking up a food combination that will actually blow up a bathroom when it gets added to the menu. So by all means, this story could have worked really well, but in, again, true Shane Dawson fashion, he really just couldn't grasp the concept of dark humor because he immediately went into racism. Again, this could have been really effective and honestly like kind of good, except he then took the humor a little bit in the wrong direction by saying, hee hee ha ha, my grandma is racist. He says, quote, "One of my favorite memories was when my brother and I dressed her up as 50 Cent and had her repeat his incredibly racist and demeaning lyrics on camera. I always thought I'd want to show that video at her funeral, but she had a black friend, so when the day finally came, I decided it would have been all kinds of awkward." Again, Shane Dawson just couldn't be serious if you paid him, and he will do a lot of things if you pay him. Next, we have My Birthday Suit, and this is the only funny story because the humor is at his expense. So this story takes place post weight loss for him, where he has a lot of loose skin and he feels very insecure about it. So he creates his own bodysuit by putting on his mom's bathing suit. He had the original Skims before it was even conceived. So he went to an amusement park with his friends for his birthday, and they had to go through metal detectors, and that bathing suit had a little metal piece in the back. So he set them off, and it turned into him getting searched by the people at the amusement park and everyone finding out that he was wearing a woman's bathing suit. Yeah, that's the only one that's kind of funny. It's the only story that I didn't highlight a single thing that was remotely offensive. But yeah, don't get too comfortable laughing at a Shane Dawson story because now we have internet famous. The next story opens up with him saying, "We were eating shitty, cheap Mexican food with what was probably dog meat in the taco filling." I love that he said that and loves Taco Bell at the same time. Oh, and then right under that, he says, "As I was mid-story about one incident during which my dog licked my butthole while I was masturbating and I didn't push him away," in parentheses, come on, we've all been there. I'm gonna have to put a lot of bleeps right now when I say this. Who the is we? Who are you talking to? Anyway, this whole story is not a good look and has aged so horribly. It's not good PR for him as a YouTuber or his fandom at the time, because the whole story is about him like getting more famous and people recognizing him when he goes out now. And it really just shows the degree of how harmful his content was, because it gave people a pass to say all the horrible things that they were keeping in private, where his fans were saying, quote, "We love when you put on that wig and act all ghetto," talking about Shanae, again, a caricature of a black woman. And there's a lot of dialogue from his fans in this book where they're essentially trying to egg him on to say more of these offensive jokes in front of them, which again, I don't think is a great reflection on the kind of content he was putting out and the people that were consuming said content. We're seeing the exact same thing happening now, where someone is given a platform, maybe on a governmental scale, and people that support said person now think it's okay to say whatever they want on the internet and be as offensive as they want. Because in Shane Dawson's case, back then, the platform was continuing to offer him monetization and pushing his content for more people to watch. They were incentivizing him to make that content and incentivizing people to engage with it. Just goes to show you how truly insidious it all was and continues to be. Anyway, next story is how to survive a horror movie. Again, another beautiful story to remind you, hey, Shane Dawson has an acting career. Check out Shane Dawson TV, buy my merch, look at my movie that has a 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh, sorry, I misspoke there. It's actually at a 14% rating. Oops, my bad. This is another very telling story that did not age well at all. Supposedly, when he was on the set of this horror movie, he had to film a kissing scene. And another actress on the set was essentially acting as an intimacy coordinator and coaching the person that he was supposed to kiss to not let Shane essentially do too much and for her to set healthy boundaries because she is being intimate on camera. And Shane got mad because he didn't like that this person was making him out to seem aggressive and pervy. He's completely floored that someone would think this about him when in the same story he says things like, "I was about to make out with a girl while her overprotective mom watched. It was incredibly creepy and because of my mommy issues, slightly a turn on. I've had better kisses from my gay uncle and he likes to use tongue." He also made a lot of jokes about incest and said that he would show his own children porn. And who could forget that he said that he has at least 2 dreams about grape a night. I mean, who could possibly think that he was creepy and weird? True, he's such a nice guy. I know whoever that actress is, she has to feel vindicated after what happened to him. Anyway, the next story is The Mean Girl Got Fat. Very throwaway, essentially, as the title suggests. This girl that bullied him in high school got fat, came to him while he was working at like a weight loss clinic or something, some kind of like scammy sales position, and he essentially had to coach her to lose weight. Very throwaway. Read it if you want. Next, we have My Girl Space Friends. This is talking about the fact that he never had girlfriends, just friends that were girls, and how he briefly considered dating one of his friends. Yeah, another story where the call was coming from inside the house. Shane Dawson was in the closet and it was made of glass. And who can forget this banger when he talks about his friend from when he was 11? He says, "I'm pretty sure she even let me her once. It wasn't sexual at all. It was more just to see what was in there. I was convinced that women had hidden jewels inside of them. Call me a pirate." That is about an 11-year-old girl, by the way. Then we have My Strange Addiction. This story is actually kind of scary because it's him essentially talking about how he was addicted to eating Splenda to the point where he was eating 250 packets every day. This is the one time that Shane Dawson stood on business and actually used his platform to talk about his experience and educate his viewers. He's actually talking about the harmful things that he did and what he's doing to change that behavior. Talking about how unhealthy it was that he was starving himself and then binging, and just in general eating these very unhealthy things, all because he wanted to look a certain way. The one and only time he actually had some goddamn sense to him. But he didn't want people to think that he was too serious. So then we transition into YouTube Got Me Fired. Pretty self-explanatory. He was working as a salesperson for a weight loss clinic, and he did a vlog in the store and they fired him immediately, which honestly, this was some Shane Dawson lore that I unlocked after reading this book. I had no idea he used to be a salesperson. But honestly, it's pretty telling. He's been a grifter since day one. Oh yeah, and he also admitted to baiting at work. Yeah, pretty mortifying stuff. Anyway, the next story actually made me laugh because about halfway through, I realized he was being serious. This one is called Astral Projection, in which he claims that he knows how to astral project, that being separate his soul consciousness from his body and travel in the astral plane. It's just such a detour from the other essays in this book. Like, we're really losing the plot, and there already wasn't plot to begin with. I think the story was only included to appeal to the conspiracy theory aspect of his brand. Like, he talks so genuinely about this dark, malignant figure that was trying to take over his body while he was astral projecting. And listen, I'm willing to believe that people can actually do that. I just refuse to believe that he knows how to do that, because all these famous people just really try to separate themselves from us normies. They really have main character syndrome, and I just refuse to believe he actually is a main character. He also finishes up the story by insinuating that some celebrities might be astral projectors that can no longer return to their bodies, saying, I think Gary Busey and Shaq might still be out there floating around, while some mentally challenged demons have taken over their bodies. Maybe Britney Spears is a projector. Wow, now everything makes sense. Again, not a serious bone in his body. Then we have Just a Pretty Face, which is a story about him being insecure with his own masculinity until someone calls him sir at a PetSmart. I guess it was just like a really big insecurity for him, that people were supposedly mistaking him for a woman. Pretty throwaway story. There's just like not that much buildup. It's not very interesting overall. I don't know. The only memorable thing about this story is him saying, I'm still shocked and slightly offended that I was never Slightly offended. What an interesting way to put that. The next story is My Leg Twin, where he was watching TV one day and saw someone that he thought had legs that looked like his because he was insecure about his legs looking fat. This person was like a Disney star, and he managed to meet them when he became famous and found out that that person is not his leg twin, because while his legs looked quote unquote fat, this person was pure muscle, which I would beg and plead for someone to figure out who he's talking about, because I don't know. I want to know truly what Disney star he managed to meet, because I would love to see what kind of delusion was going on in his mind to think that someone that was muscular and ripped looked like him. And I would absolutely never ever advocate or say that it's okay to body shame anyone. But given all the jokes that I just mentioned in this book, plus every single awful thing that he's done, I think that's okay. Shane Dawson joked about bestiality, to a child, saying the N-word, amongst a myriad of things. I think it's okay to make fun of him a little bit. A small price to pay, I would say. But then we get the nail in the coffin. The cherry on top of stories for this book, really the only one you need to read if you decide to read it, is Shocktober. If I could put this in a museum of what ended Shane Dawson's career, I would put it on full display. This is the story about how Shane Dawson was getting canceled on the internet because people thought that he had contributed to a skit about Harriet Tubman. Apparently someone made a skit about her making an S-tape, and Shane Dawson was very offended that people thought that he had a hand in making it when he did not. He said, I would never do a video about Harriet Tubman making an S-tape. Cameras weren't even around back then. I take creative liberties in my sketches, but I don't want them to be completely inaccurate. He also says that he was incredibly offended that people were calling him racist. He says, there are few words that actually offended me, but when people say I'm racist, it really gets under my skin. My superior, perfect, white skin. Someone sound the alarm. Someone put that man In handcuffs. You said what? Kristen, it was a joke. He's meant to be funny. No. No. Given his track record, that's not a joke. He's not being hee ha ha funny. The story gets worse from here when he talks about the time that he did a comedy sketch at his school where he was making fun of black people, and his teacher said, "Hey Shane, that's kind of racist." And Shane was up in arms. And apparently his friend, who happened to be black, defended him. The teacher says he was showcasing stereotypes. He was encouraging people to laugh at African Americans and the way they act. The friend responds, "But some of us do act like that." The teacher says, "Well, that doesn't make it right." "No," the friend says, "it makes it relatable. I know people who act foolish, and those people are ridiculous to me." Shane wasn't making fun of black people. He was making fun of a group of black people who act ridiculous. Now, the obvious thing to mention here is that one person does not speak for an entire group of people. Just because this one person who is your friend and biased says that it's okay for you to do this doesn't mean it actually is. And it is so funny that he was completely oblivious that this kind of rhetoric speaks to a greater issue in POC communities, where amongst ourselves, we try so desperately to differentiate and separate ourselves from quote unquote, the bad insert race here. These are the people that try so hard to appeal to the oppressor and differentiate themselves and aspire so desperately for this proximity to whiteness, when I can tell you that the people that you're trying so desperately to appeal to don't see you any differently. To these people that you are trying so desperately to get on their good side, they see all of us as the worst versions of these stereotypes, of these caricatures. That is how they see all of us. No amount of bootlicking is gonna change that. But does Shane Dawson care enough about these issues to actually have a conversation about it? Does he really understand these nuances within diverse communities? No. He also admits to knowing that his content has been controversial from the beginning, because a lot of these people, a lot of these influencers like to spread this rhetoric of it was a different time back then. This was socially acceptable. But Shane Dawson himself admits that people were in his comments since 2008 saying that he was being offensive. He's admitted to knowing it was offensive, admitted to people calling him out for it, and yet continued to make the content. The whole purpose of this story is him saying, I'm not a shock tuber. I don't just make content for the shock value of it all. When we know that that's exactly what he was doing. He even goes as far as to say, my humor was created by my environment. Margaret Cho isn't considered a racist for making jokes about Asians and their stereotypes because it's what she grew up with. It's what she knew. And the same goes for me. This whole story is him trying so desperately to convince you as the reader that, hey, minorities also find my offensive jokes funny. Therefore, they're not actually offensive. People shouldn't be afraid to push the envelope. I never want to be afraid to go into that taboo territory. And I know that this one essay probably contributed to his first apology back in 2014. I guarantee you that people knew that this book would not be received well because he essentially took no accountability for his offensive jokes and tried so desperately to defend them. But hey, they were not about to lose out on the profits of publishing a popular YouTuber memoir. So instead of taking out all the horrible and offensive things he was saying, they just had him issue an apology. There's another story after this called Prom. He made a short film about that. It's pretty throwaway. It's another essay to boost his own ego about how he came from nothing and yet is making a name for himself. This book is a wonderful, wonderful read. Again, because no matter how hard he tries, this is in print. Shane Dawson can never erase this book. He can take down his videos, he can start a new channel, but this, unfortunately for him, will be forever. And honestly, I think what this book proves is that the real problem with Shane Dawson is that he is a grifter. He is someone that is so desperate for fame that he is willing to do anything and everything to get it. Just look at all of his failed endeavors. You know, he tried making a movie, he tried being an actor, he tried being a singer, he tried being a serious filmmaker with his docuseries, he tried being a beauty guru. Now he's trying the whole podcast thing again when he has a famously bad run with podcasts. All these failed endeavors just show that he has no real passion for the kind of work that he puts out in the world. He has no passion for his community or the people that got him to where he is now. His main and true purpose is truly just to get a check at the end of the day. This book was meant to be a catalyst for his acting and film career. That's why so many of the stories were transformed into short films. It was to transition his audience from YouTube to film, which, as we all know, didn't work. It's also the reason why his current videos and podcast episodes are all titled conspiracy theories, when said conspiracy theories only take up a 10-minute segment of an hour-long podcast, and you have to go through 40 minutes of filler content just to get there. And then what are the conspiracy theories, you might ask? Well, it's Shane Dawson finding out about capitalism and glorified fun facts about pop culture. The reason we need to continue to examine this book and the past of these YouTubers that have been problematic, it's because given the current climate, we know that we are not in a post-race society. Just like back then and even now, there is an audience for this horrible and vile content. And platforming said people that make this content and built their brand off of it is detrimental to our society. It gives a pass for this audience to say what's on their mind, to say all this horrible, offensive things. Because as much as creators like Shane Dawson want to say, it was a joke and I wasn't being serious, your audience is being serious. Your audience is the kind of people that think that's funny. And no matter how you want to slice it, those jokes are not funny. They are rooted in racism and they give people a pass to be racist. We have to really examine the audience, the people that are consuming this kind of content, and why these people continue to be platformed over and over again. Because as much as Shane Dawson wants to distance himself from this point in his past, he has to realize that this kind of content gave so many people the ammunition that they needed to say what they wanted to continue to spread hateful and racist messaging. And after reading this book, I can tell you with certainty that Shane Dawson should not be forgiven for his actions. He should not be able to return to YouTube. He should not have a career, because no matter how he rebranded himself, no matter what kind of content he makes now, the fan base, his whole brand, his channel was built on something that is rotten at its core. He built himself and his image on the basis of hateful and derogatory content. And the truth of the matter is that he did not take any accountability for what he did. All he did was leave YouTube for a year, come back, make a joke about it, and then try to go back to his normal content as if nothing happened. I've yet to see any real good that he's done for these communities that he hurt over many, many years. And the reason for that is, as I've already said, Shane Dawson doesn't actually care about his fans, his community, or making anything of actual substance. His only purpose in making any kind of content is to make money. And hey, I'm always the kind of person that would say, and you would do it too for a check. But you know what I wouldn't do for a check? Make inappropriate jokes about children and about having relations with animals. I take great pleasure in knowing that Shane Dawson is begging for views and that his plan to make his own streaming platform that had glorified fast fashion quality content failed miserably. And I want to end this video by saying that Shane Dawson was never canceled. Why? Because cancel culture doesn't exist. The whole idea of cancel culture is that this person gets booed off the internet so badly that they can never ever return. That this person essentially lost everything. They no longer have a career, an audience, people are no longer associating with them, and that their life is essentially over. And yet time and time again with every single influencer that has been canceled, They always come back. So if Shane Dawson won't get canceled off the internet, then I will make this experience for him a living nightmare. Because no, Shane Dawson shouldn't be allowed to come back to the internet. He shouldn't be allowed to have a career. He should be clocking into his local grocery store like the rest of us. You know, if he wants to have a normal 9-to-5 job, go ahead. But this man should not continue to have a platform. He should not continue to have brand deals. He should have ended his career and left YouTube when he had the chance. But now he continues to make content that honestly, I can't imagine how anyone actually likes it. I actually listened to one of his more recent podcast episodes. I just thought it was funny because he was doing this competition with the other podcast hosts to see who can get the most steps in a day. And the winner got like $5,000. And I just think it's funny that like you would take a brand deal, use that money to make a competition, to then award money back to the hosts, back to the people that you employed. He gave himself money. Really interesting content we're making here. I just think it's funny because Shane Dawson doesn't know how to be funny outside of being offensive. And it shows. Anyway, with that being said, that's the end of the video. Obviously, this book is awful, not just for its content, it's also written at a very childish level. Again, this book doesn't have like dialogue tags. It uses like script writing format, and as a personal preference, I hate it. I hate it so much. And the overall language of the book is very juvenile, and it just lacks a lot of cohesion. You would think that all these stories contribute to like a greater message or a greater theme, but it lacks that backbone where like all these stories connect with each other in some way. The only common thread is Shane Dawson promoting his film career, and the other thread being really awful jokes. There's not a lot of cohesion. I never get the sense that Shane Dawson is an actual person reading this book. Again, it feels very cheap. It's just him trying to sell more products to his underage viewers, of which I was unfortunately a victim of his grift. So with that being said, thank you for watching. I hope this was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. I take pleasure in Shane Dawson's downfall. If you want to check out I Hate Myselfie, go to a secondhand bookstore or check out the library. Don't give this man your money. Truly do not. But anyway, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. This was really cathartic for me, so thank you.